The house was quiet in a way that felt heavy, not peaceful. Every sound echoed too loudly, from the ticking clock in the hallway to the hum of the refrigerator at night. A father lived there with his young son, trying to keep life moving forward after everything had fallen apart. He woke up early every morning, made breakfast, packed a small lunch, and walked his son to school before rushing off to work. From the outside, it looked like a normal routine. On the inside, both of them were carrying something they didn't know how to put down. The father had not planned to raise his child alone. Life had taken a sharp turn, and he had been forced to become strong before he felt ready. He worked long hours, not because he wanted to escape home, but because he had no other choice. Bills waited. Responsibilities didn't care about grief. By the time he returned each evening, he was tired in his bones. Yet he still tried to smile when his son ran to the door. The boy was quiet for his age. Teachers said he behaved well, but they also noticed how he sat alone during breaks, watching other children laugh and play. At home, he spent a lot of time drawing pictures or lining up his toy cars in careful rows. He rarely complained, but his silence spoke louder than words. The father noticed it, even if he didn't always know what to do about it. Some nights, father would sit at the edge of his son's bed after the lights were off, listening to the slow rhythm of breathing. In those moments, guilt pressed hard on his chest. He wondered if he was doing enough. He wondered if love alone could fill the empty space left behind. He promised himself, again and again, that things would get better. Mornings were the hardest. The father rushed through them, checking his phone while tying shoes, answering emails while pouring cereal. The boy watched quietly, learning not to interrupt. One morning, after nearly missing an important meeting, the father realized he could not keep living like this. Something had to change. The idea of hiring help had crossed his mind before, but he always pushed it away. Letting a stranger into their home felt risky. Trust did not come easily anymore. Still, the boy needed more than tired smiles and rushed conversations. He needed someone present, someone who could listen without checking the time. That night, after his son fell asleep, the father sat alone at the kitchen table and stared at his laptop screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He thought about pride, about money, about fear. Then he thought about the look in his son's eyes when he left for work each morning. Slowly, he typed out an ad asking for a nanny. Days passed with no response. The father felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Part of him hoped no one would answer, so he wouldn't have to face the decision. Then, one afternoon, an email arrived. It was polite, warm, and simple. The person wrote about experience, patience, and love for children. Nothing sounded forced. Nothing felt fake. The father read the message twice, then a third time. He closed the laptop and went to check on his son, who was sitting on the floor building a tall tower from wooden blocks. The father watched quietly as the tower wobbled and fell. The boy laughed, a real laugh that surprised them both. "Do you want help?" the father asked. The boy nodded. Together, they rebuilt the tower, block by block. For a moment, the house felt lighter. The interview was scheduled for the weekend. The father cleaned the house more than usual, wiping surfaces that were already clean. He reminded himself to stay calm, to be polite, to listen. When the doorbell rang, his heart beat faster than he expected. The person who stood at the door did not look intimidating or perfect. There was a gentle confidence in the way she spoke and a calm in her eyes. She greeted the boy first, lowering herself to his level instead of talking over him. That small gesture did not go unnoticed. The father watched closely as they talked. The boy didn't hide behind his legs like he usually did with strangers. Instead, he showed her his toy cars. She listened as if each one mattered. The father felt something loosen inside him, just a little. They sat at the kitchen table and talked about schedules, routines, and expectations. The nanny spoke honestly about boundaries and care. She didn't promise perfection. She promised effort. That mattered more. After she left, the father asked his son what he thought. "I like her," the boy said softly. "She listens." That night, the father lay awake longer than usual. He thought about control and trust, about opening a door he had kept closed for too long. He knew this was not just about finding help. It was about allowing change by the end of the week. The decision was made. The nanny would start soon. The father felt nervous, but hopeful. The boy counted the days on his fingers, asking questions about what they would do together. On the morning she was set to begin, sunlight filled the living room in a way it hadn't before. The father watched his son eat breakfast, swinging his legs under the chair. For the first time in a long while, the future did not feel so heavy. He didn't know it yet. But this simple choice would slowly reshape their lives. What began as a practical decision would become something deeper. The quiet house was about to change. None of them were ready for how much it would matter. The morning the nanny arrived, the house felt different. There was a small excitement in the air that neither the father nor his son could fully explain. The boy was dressed neatly, though his socks did not match, and he held his favorite toy tightly. The father tried to act calm, but his hands betrayed him with small tremors as he straightened the kitchen chairs. When the nanny stepped inside, she smiled warmly and greeted them both by name. It was simple, almost ordinary, but it had a weight that made the boy look up from his toy. She knelt down eye to eye with him and asked about his favorite things. The boy hesitated, then slowly began to explain how he liked to build towers and make races with his toy cars. The nanny listened, genuinely interested, and even suggested a few ideas for games. The boy's eyes widened, and for the first time, he laughed freely in front of a new person. The father watched silently from the doorway, a mixture of relief and cautious hope in his chest. He had been careful not to expect too much, but he couldn't ignore the warmth in the room. Even the air seemed lighter, less heavy with the weight of loneliness. Throughout the day, the nanny settled into the rhythm of the house. She moved with ease, helping the boy with breakfast, tidying up scattered toys, and gently guiding him through simple chores. The father noticed how naturally she connected with him. She never forced anything, never rushed, but always made her presence calm and steady. It was a stark contrast to the father's hurried mornings and evenings, which were filled with deadlines and worry. By afternoon, the boy was already showing signs of trust. He wanted her to read his favorite story aloud, something he had almost stopped doing since the loss of his mother. She read slowly, adding small expressions and voices that made the characters come alive. The boy laughed at some parts and listened intently at others. The father, working from home that day, glanced over occasionally and felt a warmth he hadn't realized he had been missing. After lunch, the father had to leave for a meeting. He hesitated at the door, watching his son wave goodbye. The nanny knelt beside the boy and asked if he wanted to show her his toy cars. They spent the next hour racing the cars across the living room, building tracks from cushions and furniture. The boy was animated, speaking freely and smiling without reserve. The father had never seen him like this with anyone outside the family. When the father returned, the house was quiet, but not in the old way. The boy was curled up on the sofa, drawing pictures, and the nanny was nearby, offering gentle guidance. The father felt a quiet relief wash over him. This simple presence had begun to fill the emptiness he hadn't known how to address. He made tea in the kitchen, listening to the soft laughter and conversations spilling from the living room. Days turned into weeks, and routines developed naturally. The nanny arrived each morning and left in the early evening. She never intruded, but she was always there when needed. She taught the boy small lessons, not the kind from books, but lessons about patience, kindness, and curiosity. He asked questions about the world around him, and she answered without judgment. The father noticed the change in him, in the way he spoke and played. There was a lightness in his step, and a brightness in his eyes that had not been there before. The father found himself observing her more often than he cared to admit. Her kindness was quiet, her care consistent, and her presence comforting. He was careful to keep his distance, to respect the boundaries that had been established. But sometimes, late at night, he found himself thinking about her, wondering what she had been like before she came into their lives. He pushed the thoughts away, reminding himself that this was about his son, not about him. One rainy afternoon, the father came home to find the boy sitting by the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. The nanny was nearby, reading a story aloud in her soft, steady voice. The boy's hand rested on hers, not out of need, but out of comfort. The father paused at the doorway, noticing the ease and trust between them. It was a small, quiet moment, but it spoke volumes. The boy began to share more of his thoughts, his feelings, and even small fears. The nanny listened, offering gentle reassurance. The father realized that his son was learning to express himself in ways he never had before. He also noticed that he himself was learning too. Watching her patience and kindness made him more aware of his own shortcomings and the ways he could grow. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was happening. One evening after dinner, the father stayed a little longer in the living room. The boy had asked for help with a puzzle, and the nanny was guiding him through it. They worked together, placing pieces carefully, celebrating small victories. The father felt a sense of peace that had been absent for years. It wasn't perfect, and life still carried its challenges, but there was hope. The boy was happy, and for now, that was enough. As the days passed, the boundaries between stranger and family blurred. Not in a dramatic way, but in quiet moments of connection. The boy began to look forward to her arrival each day. He told her about school, about friends, about dreams that he hadn't shared with anyone. She listened, laughed, and encouraged him, creating a space where he felt safe and valued. The father began to notice his own reactions. He didn't feel the tension and exhaustion he used to when leaving for work. He looked forward to coming home, to hearing about the day from both his son and the nanny. There was still work to do, bills to pay, responsibilities to manage, but the weight that had pressed down on him was lighter. He realized that having someone he could trust, someone who cared, made all the difference. The boy started inviting the nanny into his world in ways the father hadn't anticipated. He drew pictures for her, built special toys, and shared secrets. She responded with warmth and understanding, never forcing attention, but always giving it generously. The father watched, amazed at the bond growing before his eyes. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. The boy became upset over a small misunderstanding, tears streaming down his cheeks. The nanny knelt beside him, speaking softly, guiding him through his emotions. The father, witnessing the scene, felt a surge of gratitude. This was more than childcare. This was care for the heart, for the mind, for the soul. He realized that he could finally breathe, knowing his son was in safe, loving hands. That night, as the father prepared for bed, he reflected on the change. The house no longer felt empty. Laughter had returned, not loudly, but gently, like a steady river flowing through their lives. The boy slept with a smile. The father felt hope that had been missing for so long in those early days. Nothing dramatic had happened, yet everything had changed. A stranger had walked into their lives, and slowly, quietly, had begun to fill the empty spaces. The father realized that this simple act of hiring help had brought more than assistance. It had brought connection, trust, and the first steps toward healing for both him and his son. Weeks passed, and the presence of the nanny had become a quiet, steady part of the household. The boy began to open up more each day, sharing small details about his thoughts and feelings that he had never spoken aloud. It was not dramatic, not sudden, but gentle and gradual. He asked questions, sought advice, and even laughed at things he once found uninteresting. The father noticed the change in subtle ways. The boy's posture was straighter, his steps lighter, and his voice more confident. The father began to see her not only as a helper, but as someone who understood the boy in ways he struggled to. She anticipated his needs, knew when to offer guidance and when to give space. He saw the bond between them and felt a mix of gratitude and something he could not yet name. There were small moments, tiny gestures, that made him realize she was becoming indispensable. One afternoon, the boy wanted to bake cookies. The father was exhausted from work, but the nanny suggested they try together. Flour dusted the counter, and laughter filled the kitchen. The boy was focused, and the nanny guided him patiently, explaining each step. The father watched from a distance, smiling quietly. For the first time, he didn't feel the pressure to manage everything alone. He realized that someone else caring for his son did not diminish his role as a father. Instead, it enriched their lives. The boy began to share his small victories at school with her. A good grade, a new friend, a moment of pride. She celebrated each one, not with exaggerated excitement, but with genuine warmth. The father noticed how these celebrations fueled the boy's confidence. He was learning to express himself, to take joy in his accomplishments, to trust that someone would listen without judgment. Evenings became moments of calm connection. The father would sometimes sit nearby while she read stories or helped the boy with homework. He saw how naturally she interacted, encouraging curiosity and fostering patience. There was no rush, no pressure, just steady guidance. The boy began to ask questions about the world, about people, about why things happened. The nanny answered patiently, and he listened attentively. These conversations became small lessons not only for the boy, but for the father as well. One rainy day, the father came home to find the boy and the nanny creating a small art project. The boy was proud of his work and eager to show it off. The father felt a warmth he hadn't known for years. He realized that the home, once filled with silence, was now alive with creativity, conversation, and care. It was not perfect, and there were challenges, but there was growth. That mattered more than anything. The father found himself opening up slowly. He began to share small details about his day, his frustrations, and even his hopes. The nanny listened, never prying, but offering a supportive presence. He realized that having someone to talk to, someone who understood both him and his son, made the challenges of life easier to bear. It was a relief, a comfort, and a quiet joy. The boy began to trust the nanny completely. He sought her advice on small decisions, asked for her help with schoolwork, and even confided in her when he felt sad or confused. She never judged, never dismissed his feelings. She simply listened, guided, and reassured. The father watched this relationship grow and felt gratitude beyond words. It was more than care. It was connection, understanding, and love in its gentlest form. There were moments when the father noticed the bond and felt a flicker of emotion he had not anticipated. He was careful, aware of boundaries, but he could not ignore the warmth he felt when he saw the two of them together. He realized that his heart was slowly learning to trust again, learning that connection did not have to bring pain. He had been careful not to hope too much, but he could not help feeling a quiet optimism. One evening, after a long day at work, the father found the boy asleep on the couch with a blanket tucked around him. The nanny sat nearby, quietly reading a book, making sure he was comfortable. He watched them for a few moments, feeling a peace that had been absent for so long. He realized that life could be gentle, that love could be patient, and that healing was possible even in small, everyday moments. The nanny also began to share small stories from her own life, not to shift focus, but to connect. She spoke of her experiences, her lessons learned, and her values. The boy listened, fascinated, and the father found himself reflecting on his own experiences in new ways. These quiet exchanges brought understanding and growth to all of them, creating a family that was not bound by tradition, but by care and trust. The father noticed that his own patience was growing. He handled stress differently, approached problems with more thought, and smiled more easily. He realized that the presence of someone who cared so deeply for his son and respected him as a father had changed his outlook. The house felt more like a home, not because of its walls or furniture, but because of the connection and love within it. There were times when the father felt unsure. Feelings of guilt, fear, or confusion would surface. He questioned whether he was doing the right thing, whether he could fully trust someone again. But these moments were fleeting, replaced by gratitude and hope. He saw the joy in his son's eyes, the steady support of the nanny, and he understood that taking a chance had been worth it. As days turned into weeks, the father, his son, and the nanny fell into a comfortable rhythm. The boy's laughter filled the house, conversations were more open, and the quiet moments were shared in a way that brought peace. Each of them learned from the others, not in grand gestures, but in small, meaningful interactions that strengthened their bond. The father began to notice subtle ways the nanny influenced his son. He was kinder to others, more curious about the world, and more confident in expressing his thoughts. He saw the way she encouraged him without taking over, guiding him to make choices and learn from them. It was a balance of support and independence. The boy thrived in it. One weekend, they decided to spend the day together outside the house. They went to the park, played on swings, fed ducks by the pond, and shared a simple picnic. The father watched the interactions between the nanny and his son and felt a deep sense of gratitude. The boy was happy, safe, and learning about the world with someone who cared. These moments, ordinary to an outsider, were extraordinary in their quiet significance. By now the father understood that this was more than just help. The nanny had become an essential part of their lives. She brought calm when there was chaos, laughter when there was silence, and guidance when there was uncertainty. She had earned their trust and respect not through words, but through consistent, caring actions. Late at night, the father would sometimes sit quietly, reflecting on the changes in their lives. He realized that life had brought them someone who was more than he had expected. She was not a replacement for what had been lost, but a presence that allowed them to heal and grow. The boy was thriving. He was learning to love again in small ways, and the father felt a quiet joy that he had almost forgotten. In the small, everyday moments, the bond between them strengthened. The house, once heavy with silence and worry, was now filled with warmth, laughter, and understanding. Each day brought new lessons, new smiles, and new connections. The father began to see the future differently, with hope and patience rather than fear and doubt. The journey was far from over and challenges would still come. But for now, they had found a rhythm that worked, balance that nurtured both the boy and the father, and a connection with someone who had become part of their lives in the most meaningful ways. Their hearts, once cautious and guarded, were beginning to trust. Opening slowly to the possibility of something beautiful and lasting, time passed. And the connection between the father, his son, and the nanny grew stronger. What had begun as simple assistance had become something more profound. The boy laughed more freely, spoke with confidence, and approached life with curiosity. The father noticed changes in himself too. He felt lighter, calmer, and more capable of handling the demands of both work and parenting. Yet beneath the surface, emotions were stirring that neither of them fully understood. The father began to notice moments when he lingered on thoughts about the nanny. He appreciated her patience and her gentle ways, the way she understood his son without trying to control him. He admired her kindness and dedication, and he found himself anticipating her presence in a way that surprised him. At first, he dismissed these feelings, telling himself they were just gratitude and relief. But over time, he began to wonder if it was something deeper. The nanny, meanwhile, was aware of her own feelings, but careful not to cross boundaries. She cared deeply for the father and the boy, and she understood the responsibility she held. She focused on creating a safe and nurturing environment, always prioritizing the boy's needs. Yet, small gestures, a lingering glance, a soft word revealed her growing fondness for both of them. She was careful, thoughtful, and patient, knowing that love was not something to rush. One afternoon, the boy came home from school upset. He had argued with a friend and felt misunderstood. The nanny knelt beside him, holding his hands gently. She listened as he poured out his feelings, offering guidance without judgment. She helped him understand the situation, suggesting ways to make amends while respecting his feelings. The boy calmed down, his tears replaced by a tentative smile. The father watched from a distance, feeling gratitude and a quiet sense of awe. He realized how much he relied on her presence, not just for the boy, but for himself. That evening, the father found himself lingering in the living room after the boy had gone to bed. The nanny was there, organizing books and toys. They exchanged small talk at first, but soon the conversation became more personal. They shared stories about their lives, their struggles, and their hopes. The father realized he felt comfortable around her in a way he hadn't felt with anyone for a long time. It was natural, easy, and yet it stirred emotions he hadn't expected. Over the next few weeks, subtle signs of affection appeared. The father noticed the way his son's face lit up when the nanny arrived. The little touches she gave while guiding him, and the quiet moments they shared as a family. He found himself smiling at small things, feeling a warmth that had been missing from his life. He began to understand that love could grow slowly. in ways that didn't feel forced or overwhelming. One weekend, the father suggested they spend the day together outside the house. They went to a nearby park, walked along winding paths, and shared a simple picnic. The boy played freely, laughing and exploring with the nanny close by. The father watched them, feeling a mixture of joy and something more complicated he wasn't ready to name. It was a peaceful day, filled with small moments that felt ordinary yet extraordinary in their quiet significance. That evening, as they returned home, the father noticed the way the nanny helped his son remove muddy shoes and coats. There was care in her actions, a tenderness that spoke louder than words. He felt a surge of gratitude, and something else he could not yet define. He knew that their relationship was evolving, shifting into a space where emotions were deepening. A small crisis one day brought everything to the surface. The boy had climbed a tree and got stuck, frightened and unable to get down. The father rushed to the scene, heart pounding, and the nanny followed closely behind. Together, they calmed him, guided him safely down, and held him until his fear subsided. In that intense moment, the father realized how much he depended on her strength and composure. He saw clearly the bond that had formed between them, built on trust, care, and shared experiences. After the incident, as they sat together in the living room, the father felt a wave of emotion he could no longer ignore. He looked at the nanny, who was quietly ensuring the boy felt safe and calm. For the first time, he allowed himself to acknowledge his feelings. He cared deeply for her, more than he had intended. The nanny noticed the change in his demeanor, but she remained composed. Understanding that emotions needed time and patience, days turned into weeks, doused, and the emotional connection between the three of them grew. The boy continued to thrive, showing confidence and happiness that warmed the father's heart. He realized that their little family had become something extraordinary. The nanny's presence had transformed their lives, not through dramatic events, but through consistent, loving care. She had become essential to their happiness, their stability, and their growth. The father also began to understand that loving again did not erase the past. The memories of loss remained, but they no longer overshadowed the present. He could allow himself to feel joy, to experience connection, and to open his heart cautiously. The nanny had shown him that love could be gentle, patient, and enduring, and that it could exist alongside grief and responsibility. There were moments of quiet reflection when the father considered the future. He knew challenges would come, that life was unpredictable, but he felt ready to face them. The trust and affection between them provided a foundation he had never had before. He realized that family was not defined by circumstance alone, but by care, commitment, and the willingness to open one's heart. One evening, after the boy had gone to bed, the father and the nanny sat together in the kitchen, sipping tea. They spoke softly, sharing thoughts and feelings that had built over months of living closely together. The father expressed gratitude for her presence, for her patience, and for the love she had shown his son. The nanny responded with warmth, acknowledging the trust and connection that had developed. In that moment, unspoken emotions were recognized, and a quiet understanding passed between them. From that night on, small gestures became more frequent. The father noticed the way the nanny's eyes would meet his with unspoken care, the way she would offer support without being asked. He began to allow himself to respond, to feel, and to acknowledge the emotions that had been growing for months. It was slow, careful, and deliberate, but it was real. Through all of this, the boy remained at the center. His happiness and growth were the guiding force for both adults. They learned to navigate their feelings while prioritizing his well-being. The home, once filled with silence and routine, was now alive with laughter, conversation, and shared experiences. Each day brought small victories, gentle lessons, and moments of connection that strengthened their bond. The father realized that this journey was not just about finding help or managing life alone. It was about discovering that love could return in unexpected ways, that trust could be rebuilt, and that family could be redefined. The nanny had become more than a caregiver. She had become a partner in creating a life that was full of warmth, stability, and hope in the quiet moments. The father would watch them together, the boy laughing, the nanny guiding, the bond growing stronger. He understood that their lives had changed forever in ways that were beautiful, delicate, and profound. The journey of love, trust, and connection was unfolding. And he knew that the future, though uncertain, held the promise of joy and togetherness for all of them. The house had changed in ways the father never imagined. What once had been filled with silence and routine was now alive with laughter, conversation, and warmth. The boy was thriving, his curiosity boundless, his confidence growing every day. The nanny had become an integral part of their lives, her presence steady, nurturing, and deeply caring. The father realized that their bond had grown beyond the simple roles of parent and caregiver. They were now a family in the truest sense. One morning, the father watched from the kitchen as his son raced across the living room with a toy car. The nanny clapped her hands in encouragement, her smile warm and genuine. The boy laughed, glancing at his father and then back at the nanny. That small, everyday moment spoke volumes. The house no longer felt like a place to endure. It felt like a home, filled with connection and love. The father noticed the subtle ways in which he and the nanny had grown close. Their conversations lingered longer, filled with warmth and understanding. There was a comfort in simply being near each other, an ease that had taken months to develop. He felt emotions that he had long pushed away: trust, admiration, and something deeper that was beginning to root itself in his heart. The boy, aware of the closeness but too innocent to name it, simply enjoyed the love and attention surrounding him. He felt safe and happy, and that became the most important measure of success for the father. Seeing his son smile freely, hearing his laughter echo through the rooms, the father understood that they had all found a new balance. The family they were forming was not perfect, but it was real, and that mattered most. One rainy afternoon, the father returned from work to find the nanny and his son playing a board game on the floor. The boy's cheeks were flushed with excitement, and he jumped up to greet his father. The nanny smiled softly, a quiet acknowledgement of the small family they had become. The father sat down beside them, joining in the game. It was a simple activity, but it filled the room with warmth and connection. For the first time in a long while, he felt completely present, able to enjoy the moment without distraction. Weeks passed, and the bond between the father and the nanny continued to deepen. They shared small, everyday moments, preparing meals together, helping the boy with schoolwork, walking in the park, and enjoying quiet evenings at home. Each moment was ordinary in appearance, but extraordinary in meaning. Through shared experiences, laughter, and gentle care, they had built a relationship founded on trust, respect, and affection. One evening, after the boy had gone to bed, the father and the nanny sat together on the sofa. The house was quiet, but the warmth of their presence filled the space. They spoke softly, sharing thoughts and feelings that had been building for months. The father expressed his gratitude, acknowledging how much she had transformed their lives. The nanny responded with sincerity, revealing her own admiration and care. In that moment, unspoken emotions became clearer, and the foundation of love was quietly established. The father realized that loving again did not mean forgetting the past or diminishing the memory of those they had lost. Instead, it meant allowing new experiences, connections, and emotions to grow. He felt a renewed sense of hope, a belief that life could be joyful, full, and meaningful. The nanny's presence had shown him that healing was possible and that family could take different forms, built on love, trust, and understanding. As the days continued, small gestures and shared experiences reinforced their bond. The father noticed the way his son looked at her with admiration, the way he sought her guidance, and the comfort he found in her presence. He understood that the boy's happiness was intertwined with their own connection. Together, they had created a nurturing environment where all three could grow, learn, and love freely. One sunny afternoon, they decided to spend the day outdoors, exploring a nearby nature trail. The boy ran ahead, laughter trailing behind him, while the father and the nanny walked together, speaking quietly. There was a gentle ease in their interaction, a balance of friendship and growing affection. The father realized that life had offered him a chance to embrace joy once more, and he chose to step forward with courage and openness. Returning home, the boy excitedly shared discoveries from the tray: an unusual leaf, a bird's song, a hidden puddle. The nanny listened attentively, encouraging his curiosity, while the father joined in with questions and smiles. The house felt alive, a sanctuary of learning, laughter, and love. The father understood that this life, though shaped by challenges and losses, was filled with moments worth cherishing. As weeks turned into months, the bond between them solidified. The father and the nanny began to plan small family activities: picnics, movie nights, and weekend walks. Each event strengthened their connection, creating memories that would last a lifetime. The boy thrived in this environment, confident and happy. Knowing that he was loved and supported, the father also noticed subtle changes in himself. He became more patient, more open to sharing feelings, and more appreciative of life's small joys. He realized that love, when nurtured gently and honestly, could transform even the most cautious heart. He had learned to trust, to hope, and to embrace the possibility of happiness once more. One evening, as the three of them sat together enjoying a quiet meal, the father felt a profound sense of contentment. The house was no longer just a building. It was a home filled with love, laughter, and connection. He looked at the nanny and then at his son, and understood that their lives had changed forever. What had started as a practical decision to hire help had blossomed into a deep, enduring bond, a family built on care, respect, and the gentle power of love. The father realized that life's unexpected turns could lead to beautiful outcomes. The nanny had entered their lives and, through patience, kindness, and understanding, had brought healing and joy. The boy had found stability and happiness, and the father had rediscovered the possibility of love. Together, they had created a family that was strong, resilient, and full of hope. In the quiet moments of reflection, the father understood that this journey was ongoing. Life would continue to bring challenges, but they were no longer facing them alone. They had each other, bound by trust, affection, and the shared experiences that had woven them together. The house, once empty and silent, was now a place of warmth, laughter, and life. The father knew that the future held unknowns, but he no longer feared them. With the nanny by his side and his son thriving in their care, he felt confident that they could face anything together. They had built a family not by circumstance alone, but by love, patience, and the willingness to open their hearts. The journey had been long and gentle, filled with small victories and moments of connection, and it had led them to a place of hope and happiness. In the end, the father, his son, and the nanny had discovered that family was not simply defined by traditional roles or past losses. It was created through love, trust, and the shared experiences that strengthened their bond each day. Their lives, intertwined in unexpected ways, had grown richer, fuller, and more joyful. Together they faced the future with confidence, knowing that their hearts had found a home in each other, and that no challenge could diminish the love they had built. Life settled into a comforting rhythm, yet it was never static. The father, his son, and the nanny had created a world filled with warmth, laughter, and trust. But life, as it often does, brought new challenges. One morning, the boy woke up unusually quiet. His breakfast sat untouched. His favorite toy lay abandoned on the floor. The nanny noticed immediately. She knelt beside him, gently asking what was wrong. The boy hesitated, then whispered that a friend at school had moved away. The father arrived soon after, concern etched across his face. Together they listened, comforted, and reassured him that feelings of loss were natural, that it was okay to miss someone, but that he still had love and support all around him. The day moved slowly. The father tried to work from home while keeping a watchful eye on his son, who wandered from activity to activity without focus. The nanny suggested a quiet afternoon outside, just the three of them, to breathe fresh air and shake off the melancholy. They walked to the nearby park, the boy's small hand slipping into hers, occasionally glancing at his father with a tentative smile. The simplicity of the moment was profound. The father realized that these small gestures, holding hands, sharing stories, noticing sadness, were the real building blocks of trust and family. During the walk, they stopped by the pond. The boy tossed pebbles into the water, counting the ripples, and gradually his laughter returned. The nanny encouraged him, making up little stories about the ducks swimming by. The father watched, feeling gratitude and something deeper, the realization that love could be patient and healing without grand gestures. Moments like this, ordinary yet full of care, reminded him that family was built not just on shared joy, but on shared resilience. That evening, as the boy went to bed, he hugged them both tightly. The father held him longer than usual, feeling the weight of responsibility and the depth of emotion swelling in his chest. The nanny watched quietly, her own eyes soft with affection. They both understood, silently, that the boy's happiness and sense of security depended on their combined care. The father felt a new appreciation for the nanny, not just as a caregiver, but as someone who had become essential to the emotional fabric of their home. Over the next weeks, subtle tensions began to emerge, not from conflict, but from life's demands. The father's work hours became longer, and he found himself exhausted at the end of the day. He sometimes snapped in frustration, though immediately regretted it. The nanny noticed, but she did not judge. She offered support, helping him balance his time while still keeping their routines stable. The boy observed quietly, sensing the emotional undercurrents, and the father realized that this family required constant attention, understanding, and empathy from all sides. One weekend, they planned a small trip to the countryside. The boy's excitement was contagious, and even the father felt the tension of work lift for a few hours. They hiked gently along wooded trails, the boy running ahead with the nanny encouraging him to stay safe. The father trailed behind, watching their interactions. He noticed small, meaningful things, the way she laughed with his son, the way she encouraged his curiosity, the way his son looked at her with unguarded joy. It hit him again. She had become indispensable, not just for practical help, but for love, guidance, and emotional growth. In the evening, back at their rented cabin, they sat around a small fire. The boy shared stories from the day, and the nanny listened intently, asking questions that made him feel valued. The father joined in, and the three of them created a cocoon of warmth and connection. The father realized that happiness was built in small, repeated act-sharing stories. Listening carefully, noticing emotions, and offering support. It was quiet, steady work, and it required intention. Yet the rewards were immeasurable. Life continued, filled with similar rhythms. The boy learned new skills at school, celebrated small victories, and occasionally faced setbacks. Each time, the father and the nanny supported him together. They became a unit, problem-solving, celebrating, and comforting as a team. Their shared responsibilities strengthened the bond among them, revealing that family was not just a concept, but a practice, one that demanded empathy, patience, and love every single day. One rainy afternoon, the father came home exhausted. He had been dealing with a particularly stressful project and found himself tense, short-tempered, and discouraged. The nanny noticed immediately, offering tea and a quiet smile. She suggested they sit together for a few minutes, letting the boy play nearby with small toys. Her presence was calming, almost magnetic. The father felt his tension ease as he sat quietly, allowing himself to relax in her company. He realized that support could be gentle, unspoken, incredibly powerful. The boy observed the dynamic and decided to bring them closer together, crawling into his father's lap and holding both their hands. The father smiled, a genuine expression of peace and gratitude. He understood that family, love, and care could exist in layers: emotional, practical, and spiritual. Each layer built upon the other, creating a home that was safe, nurturing, and full of possibility. Weeks turned into months, and the bond between them strengthened further. The father began to notice small shifts in his own feelings. The admiration he held for the nanny evolved into a deeper affection. He felt the warmth of companionship, the thrill of mutual understanding, and the quiet joy of sharing daily life with someone who truly mattered. Yet he remained mindful, ensuring that his emotions did not overshadow the boy's needs. The nanny, too, felt a shift in her heart. She had always cared deeply for them both, but now she recognized a love that went beyond the responsibilities of her role. She balanced her feelings with professionalism and care, always keeping the boy's emotional world as the priority. Her affection was gentle, deliberate, and patient, growing in quiet confidence with each passing day. One evening, during a simple game of cards, the father noticed the boy looking between them, smiling knowingly. The boy's innocence and clarity made the father laugh quietly. He realized that the child had long ago recognized the love that had quietly grown between them, even if the adults had not fully named it. The realization filled him with warmth. He felt a renewed commitment to nurturing their family with care and thoughtfulness. Life was not without its challenges. There were days when work deadlines loomed, school projects created tension, or emotions ran high. Yet, through each trial, they leaned on one another. They celebrated victories, soothed frustrations, and shared small joys that knit their lives tightly together. Their home was no longer a place of survival, but a sanctuary of growth, laughter, and unconditional care. The father reflected often on the journey they had traveled. He understood now that taking the chance to invite the nanny into their lives had changed everything. She had brought more than care. She had brought love, stability, and healing. His son was thriving emotionally, socially, and intellectually. And he himself had rediscovered hope, joy, and the courage to feel deeply again. One night, after the boy had gone to sleep, the father and the nanny sat together, speaking quietly about the past, the present, and the future. They acknowledged the deep bond they shared, the trust that had been built, and the love that had grown slowly over time. There was no need for grand gestures or declarations. Their connection was already proven in daily life, in shared moments, and in unwavering support. The father realized that family was not defined by circumstance alone. It was a choice, a practice, and an ongoing effort. It was built on love, patience, respect, and understanding. The nanny had become more than a caregiver. She was a partner in creating a life that was nurturing, joyful, and full of hope. The boy had found stability. The father had found love. And together they had built something lasting. As the night deepened, father looked at her and felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had traveled a long, gentle journey, one filled with small victories, moments of laughter, and acts of care. The boy, asleep upstairs, represented the heart of their family, the bond that guided them, and the reason they had come together. They had discovered that love could be patient, steady, and quietly transformative. In the days that followed, they continued to build memories together, simple walks, shared meals, school projects, and quiet conversations. Each moment strengthened the connections that had grown between them, making their family resilient and full of warmth. The father realized that life's unexpected turns could bring blessings in disguise, and that love, when nurtured patiently, could create a home unlike any other. Their story was not over, nor would it ever truly be. Life would continue to bring challenges, surprises, and changes. Yet they were ready. Together, they had learned the importance of trust, patience, and unconditional care. They had discovered that family could be chosen, nurtured, and grown, and that love, in its quiet, consistent form, was the strongest foundation of all. And so, each day, they lived with warmth, hope, and a shared commitment to one another. Their hearts bound together in a home full of life and love. The seasons had begun to change. Bringing cooler air and soft sunlight that filtered through the windows, life had settled into a rhythm, yet it continued to surprise them in quiet, meaningful ways. The father, his son, and the nanny had built a life that was filled with warmth, trust, and laughter, but the world outside remained unpredictable, and they learned to navigate it together. One morning, the boy woke up unusually thoughtful. He approached the kitchen table with a small notebook clutched in his hands. The nanny smiled gently and asked what he was writing. He looked up with wide eyes and said he wanted to draw pictures of all the happy moments he remembered from the past months. The father looked on, feeling a swell of emotion. It was a simple act, but it carried the weight of joy, growth, and trust. The boy's small hand moved with careful attention. sketching moments that included them all together: picnics in the park, rainy afternoons indoors, the warmth of a quiet evening at home. The nanny knelt beside him, offering encouragement without intrusion. She asked questions about the drawings, helping him tell the stories behind them. The father joined in, adding his own reflections and memories. Together, they turned the small kitchen table into a canvas of shared experiences, where laughter and affection filled the air. The father realized that these moments were more valuable than anything money could buy or work could achieve. They were the essence of family. As the day unfolded, they decided to take a short walk outside. The crisp air filled their lungs, and the boy ran ahead, laughing freely. The nanny followed closely, keeping a watchful yet gentle eye. The father walked behind, observing the two of them, noticing how naturally they moved together as a unit. It was in these quiet moments, the small gestures and shared glances, that the father felt the depth of their connection. Life had given him more than he had hoped for, and he understood that nurturing these bonds required patience, attention, and care. The afternoon brought a small challenge. The boy wanted to climb a tree he had spotted near their path. He hesitated at first, uncertain of his balance. The nanny encouraged him gently, demonstrating how to climb safely. The father felt a mix of concern and trust. He realized that allowing the boy to face small challenges with guidance was part of growing and part of building confidence. Together, they cheered as the boy reached the first branch. His face lit with pride, and the father felt a deep sense of fulfillment. These small victories, though ordinary in appearance, were monumental in shaping the boy's character and self-esteem. Back at home, the father and the nanny prepared a simple dinner while the boy set the table, proud of his ability to contribute. The kitchen was filled with the smells of cooking, the soft sounds of clinking utensils, and the gentle hum of conversation. The father glanced at the nanny, noting the ease and grace with which she moved, and felt a warmth that went beyond gratitude. She had become his partner in life, someone who shared the responsibility of nurturing not only a child but a home filled with love. After dinner, they gathered in the living room for a storytelling session. The boy had prepared a small puppet show, using his toys to act out scenes from their recent adventures. The nanny laughed and played along, voicing the characters and encouraging improvisation. The father joined in, adding dramatic flair and playful gestures. Laughter echoed through the room, weaving a tapestry of joy and connection. In those moments, the father realized that family was not defined by biology alone. It was defined by shared experiences, trust, and the consistent presence of love. Later that evening, as the boy drifted off to sleep, the father and the nanny sat together quietly. The house was calm, the soft glow of the lamps creating a warm cocoon. They spoke gently about the day, their reflections, and the small victories they had witnessed. The father expressed his appreciation for her dedication and patience, acknowledging how much she had transformed their lives. She responded with humility, sharing that her care for them had deepened her own sense of purpose and joy. In that quiet conversation, unspoken emotions were acknowledged, a bond strengthened, and mutual respect affirmed. Weeks turned into months, and their lives continued to evolve. The boy thrived in school, made new friends, and shared stories of kindness and curiosity. The father observed his growth with pride, recognizing the nurturing influence of the nanny alongside his own guidance. He realized that the strength of their little family lay not in perfection, but in resilience, love, and the ability to navigate life together. One afternoon, the father noticed the boy looking concerned. The nanny knelt beside him, asking gently what was on his mind. He admitted that he was worried about a school project, unsure if he could complete it on time. Together, they brainstormed ideas, created a simple plan, and divided tasks. The father provided guidance where needed, and the nanny offered reassurance and practical advice. The boy worked diligently, and when he presented the project at school, he beamed with pride. The father felt a deep satisfaction, understanding that these lessons in problem-solving and confidence were as important as any academic achievement in life. However, was not always without challenges. The father faced increasing responsibilities at work, and there were days when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him. On such days, The nanny's presence was a stabilizing force. She encouraged breaks, shared the load of household responsibilities, and offered emotional support without judgment. The father began to understand the true depth of partnership, realizing that love and care were not always dramatic gestures, but often quiet, steady acts of support and understanding. One winter evening, the family decided to decorate the house together. The boy was ecstatic, stringing lights with excitement while the father and the nanny arranged ornaments and decorations. The house transformed into a warm, festive haven. Laughter, conversation, and shared effort created a sense of unity and joy. The father looked around at the scene, the bright eyes of his son, the gentle smile of the nanny, and the cozy glow of their home, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. This was what life could be. Challenging, yes, but also full of beauty, connection, and love. During these months, subtle shifts in the father and nanny's relationship continued. Their conversations grew more personal, filled with reflections, dreams, and gentle expressions of care. Neither rushed, understanding the importance of patience and mutual respect. Their bond deepened naturally, marked by shared responsibility, admiration, and quiet moments of affection. The father recognized that love could grow steadily, nurtured by trust, shared experiences, and daily care. The boy, perceptive and full of innocence, occasionally commented on the closeness he observed. His small remarks were light-hearted, sometimes teasing, but always reflective of his understanding that the three of them formed a unit of family. The father and nanny responded with warmth, reinforcing the sense of security and belonging that surrounded him. Together, they created an environment where the boy could flourish emotionally, socially, and intellectually. One spring morning, the father took the boy and the nanny to a nearby botanical garden. The vibrant colors of the flowers and the gentle hum of life around them created a magical backdrop for exploration and learning. The boy ran ahead, pointing out plants, asking questions, and laughing freely. The nanny guided him with patience and curiosity while the father joined in, offering observations and encouragement. By the end of the day, they were tired but joyful, their bond strengthened by shared experiences and the simple pleasure of spending time together in nature as they returned home. The father reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. He had once believed that happiness and love were distant, that grief and responsibility left little room for joy. Yet through patience, care, and the gentle influence of the nanny, he had discovered that love could return quietly, steadily, and profoundly. His son thrived, and his own heart had learned to trust and hope again. That night, after the boy had gone to sleep, the father and the nanny sat together, sharing a quiet cup of tea. They spoke of hopes, dreams, and the life they had built. There was no need for grand declarations. Their connection was proven in daily acts of care, laughter, and understanding. The father realized that the true measure of family was not perfection, but love in action, consistent, patient, and enduring. In the weeks that followed, the father, his son, and the nanny continued to navigate life's challenges and joys. School projects, work responsibilities, and everyday routines became opportunities for connection, growth, and learning. They celebrated victories, comforted one another through setbacks, created a home that was a sanctuary of love, laughter, and resilience. The father understood that this story was ongoing. Life would continue to bring surprises, challenges, and new experiences. Yet, with trust, patience, and care, they were ready to face whatever came their way. Their home was filled with warmth and life, a testament to the quiet, steady power of love and connection. Together, they had built something Lastinga family not defined by circumstance alone, but by choice, dedication, and the shared commitment to care for one another. And so, each day, they moved forward with hope, gratitude, and a profound understanding that family is created through love, patience, and shared life. They had learned that happiness was not a distant goal, but a daily practice, found in the small moments of laughter, the gentle touch of care, and the unwavering presence of one another. Their hearts, intertwined through experience, trust, and affection, had found a home in each other. And the future, though unknown, was bright with promise and love.